Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be looking at a really interesting deck that basically has two different builds depending on the color that you use them for. So I'm going to be talking about the Ragnalordmon deck. So Ragnalordmon being a really powerful Digimon that can be played in either red or black means that he has a red build and a black build, and each build has their own merit, their own strengths, and their own weaknesses. And today I'm going to be highlighting the English Special Booster 1.5 red version of Ragnalordmon. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Babydmon. So Babydmon is a really good Digitama for the deck because he has this nice inheritable where during your turn, if the Digimon has piercing, then it gets a plus 2000 DP. So part of the big Ragnalord combo is just setting him up with a whole bunch of abilities, and piercing is one of those abilities, so it only makes sense that Babydmon can give him a nice buff for him having piercing. And then the main Digitama of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Gigimon. So Gigimon is just one of the more statically generic best Digitama for the deck, just because his inheritable ability can be used on any of the levels depending on how you're playing the game. So his inheritable ability is during your turn. If your opponent has 5 or more cards in their trash, then this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. So that plus 1000 DP can matter depending on what stage you're trying to aggress with. So Gigimon's ability is just statically good. Next, on to the rookies. I'm running 4 copies of Monodramon. So Monodramon is just the value vanilla rookie. Nothing really too special there. Next, I'm running 3 copies of Biyomon. So this version of Biyomon is really nice because it has a when destroyed ability, where if this Digimon was destroyed during your turn, then you get +1 memory. Yes, it does have to be destroyed on your turn, but Biyomon is just a really good rookie to aggress with, and is one of the only rookies we actually want to aggress with, and it'll reward us by gaining a memory to help extend some of our plays. Next, I'm running 3 copies of Zubamon. So Zubamon is a pretty solid Digimon just because he is that when or on play Digimon where he is going to look for something. So what Zubamon is looking for is you get to check the top 5 cards of your deck, and then you get to add 1 Ragnalordmon and 1 Digimon with Legend Arms in its typing, and then put that into your hand. So basically, if it says Legend Arms down here over in this text box, then you're able to grab it, and we are running a whole bunch of Legend Arm Digimon, so the chances of you hitting something is going to be rather high, and then obviously your big boy is he gets to try to help dig out Ragnalordmon as well. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Agumon. So this version of Agumon is really good just because his buff that he gives is just statically decent. So he has the nice inheritable effect of during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. That's literally all we need him to do, and that's why we run him. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of DarkTyrannomon. So DarkTyrannomon is really only in here just because he has an Evo cost of 1, but he does help against if we are being de-digivolved by the opponent's Omnimon Alter S, to where the 6000 DP actually does matter, and the 6000 DP also could make him a rather aggressive champion to want to try to swing with. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of ZubaEagermon. So ZubaEagermon is a pretty solid Digimon just because he has a really powerful inheritable ability where during your turn, if this Digimon is a level 7 Digimon, then it gets security attack +1. So obviously the whole goal of the deck is to try to get to Ragnalordmon, our main level 7 and our main Mega Digimon. So just going all the way up into Ragnalordmon with this Digimon in his evolution source means he's going to get security attack +1. Pair that with a whole bunch of his other abilities, and he is just an absolute monster to deal with. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Greymon. So this version of Greymon is basically doing the same thing that ZubaEagermon is doing, except the Digimon doesn't need to be level 7, and he just inherently gives security attack +1. So this is really good for some of our other stages, so that way they could aggress it if we don't see Ragnalordmon, and he's just overall a really fantastic inheritable. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Lavogaritamon. So Lavogaritamon is just another value vanilla card. This time he's following more of the DarkTyrannomon line kind of approach, where we're really playing him just because he has a really low evo cost, but on the off chance that we do want to aggress with the card, him having higher DP than something like Groundramon, it does make him a little bit harder just to raw play, but we're not really trying to raw play things as often as one might like. So I just value the Digimon having naturally higher DP rather than the overall cost efficiency of something like Groundramon. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Duramon. So Duramon is a really powerful Digimon for basically all of the same things that the Greymon and ZubaEagermon are doing, where he gives the nice inheritable ability where if the Digimon is level 7, then he gets security attack +1. So you basically just start stacking all of these instances of security attack plus onto Ragnalordmon, and then when he swings, he's basically going to be swinging for all of the opponent's security more often than not. Next, onto the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of BryweLudramon. So BryweLudramon is a really decent Mega just because he isn't exactly the most efficient, but if we need to aggress with him, the 12,000 DP does matter quite a bit, on top of which evoing for 3 isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, but what's really interesting is the fact that he gives the inheritable of Blocker. So him being able to give our level 7s blocker is just absolutely huge because it can make them a really big threat just having a big blocker, and he's mostly in here for Ragnalordmon synergy just because Ragnalordmon already has a whole bunch of keywords and blocker just works with one of his other keywords. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Durandamon. So Durandamon is in here for basically all of the same reasons why BryweLudramon is in here. He is just a really solid Mega in case we just need to aggress with him for his stats. On top of which, he also gives an inheritable ability to our level 7s, and this time it's the inheritable ability of Piercing. So this way, even if the opponent tries to block our Digimon, we're still going to be hitting them for basically all of their security, making it really, really hard for our Digimon to want to be blocked. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Phoenixmon. So Phoenixmon is basically doing almost the exact same thing as BryweLudramon and Durandamon, where it's just a really efficient and really aggressive Mega, just because the 12,000 DP stat is pretty solid on top of any buffs that we give him, on top of which he also evolves for 2, so that way we could get into our level 7s a little bit faster and a little bit more efficiently than our opponent. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of the main man of the deck, which is Ragnalordmon. So Ragnalordmon is an absolutely insane card just because of the possibility and power that this card presents. So first big thing to note is he evolves for 3 as a level 7. So he is just a very, very efficient level 7 to digivolve into, on top of which he has 14,000 DP, which isn't too shabby, so hopefully you have a couple of buffs on him, so that way his DP is even higher, so that way he could beat out Omnimon in security checks, or if he just needs to attack into the opponent's rested Omnimon, he could do that as well. So Ragnalordmon is already looking to be a very efficient card just for his stat line, and then on top of which he naturally has security attack +1, so pair that up with all of our other instances of security attack, and he could basically hit for the opponent's whole security stack in one swing, which is just really, really powerful to think about. And then on top of which he also has the Reboot ability. So the Reboot ability pairs very nicely with the Blocker ability, so that way he has Blocker and Reboot, so that way you could both aggress and defend with him at the same time. That's kind of his whole gimmick, where half of him is sword-based, half of him is shield-based. So he's just trying to play into both of those aspects because of the Digimon he comes from. So him having Reboot also just allows him to protect himself, so that way the opponent is going to have a harder time trying to get rid of him, because now it's going to be harder to catch him in a rested state to try to beat up with him with a Digimon that is stronger than him. And then on top of all of that, what really makes this card absolutely insane is the fact that he has a very powerful when Digivolved ability, where you get to add 1 Durandamon or BryweLudramon from your hand on top of this Digimon's Digivolution source, and then you gain 3 memory. So if you Digivolve into a Durandamon and you have a BryweLudramon in hand, and Digivolve into Ragnalordmon, then you just get to play BryweLudramon as another evolution source. So that's just really, really powerful. And then because they both have inheritables, it just makes Ragnalordmon a very stacked Digimon. And that's kind of like the whole goal, is make Ragnalordmon as stacked and as powerful as you possibly can make him. And the fact that he basically gives you the 3 memory back means he's even more efficient, on top of him being a level 7 that already evolves for 3. So he basically almost evolves for 0, which is really insane to think about. So you better watch out for any Terriermons, Gazimons, or Chumons, because they will stop this ability. But regardless, if they don't have them, then a evolve for 0 Ragnalordmon is just a really good thing to have. And then, like I said, the whole goal of the deck is just to Digivolve into a very powerful Ragnalordmon, and then basically have Ragnalordmon put so much pressure onto the opponent that they just can't really do anything about it. And then the last mega of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Omnimon Alter S. So I'm running 1 copy of Omnimon Alter S just as like an alternate level 7 that we could utilize. He's still very, very powerful just because he has 2 really good abilities, and he Digivolves off of red or black. So because BryweLudramon is black, he just is a little bit more efficient than Omnimon, because if we are sitting on a BryweLudramon, then we can't exactly Digivolve into the normal Omnimon. So Omnimon Alter S just fits a little bit more with the Digivolution lines of the deck. And then on top of which, he has 2 really powerful abilities, as I said. The first one is a when Digivolving ability, where you get to de-Digivolve all of the opponent's Digimon by 1. And then if any of the opponent's Digimon has 5,000 DP or less, then you get to delete them. So that's just really, really strong, because it's basically acting as a big board wipe. And again, that's just really powerful. And then on top of that, he even has a really good when attacking skill, where this Digimon can't be blocked this turn by returning 1 level 6 Digimon from its Digivolution source back to your hand. So unfortunately, if you do use his ability on either Durandamon or BryweLudramon, you are going to be losing the ability that they give him, but you have the option of when you want to do it and if you want to do it. And then obviously his best target is Phoenixmon, because you're not really losing much of anything, just to make him unblockable. And having him be unblockable does matter, because he can swing to just close out the game. The big thing to note with Omnimon Alter S is the fact that he is white versus Ragnalordmon being red, so you are losing a tiny bit out on the color synergy, but the fact that he's still a level 7 that plays very, very nicely with the deck is why you want to run him. Next, onto the options, I'm just going to be running only 2 copies of Gaia Force. So Gaia Force is just a really strong option card just because it has the main ability of deleting one of the opponent's Digimon. So this is just really good because, as you can see, there's not exactly a whole lot of removal on our Digimon. So we still want a way to just interact with the opponent's field in some way, shape, or form. And having Gaia Force just to try to delete something on the opponent's field is still very, very good, whether we play it from our hand or our security. And then lastly, onto the Tamers, I'm just going to be running 2 copies of Tai Kamiya. So Tai Kamiya is just a very good tamer for this deck just because he is 1, the memory fixing tamer of the deck, so if our memory is 2 or less, then it becomes 3, and because of his ability to just make our memory 3, it just makes playing Ragnalordmon that much easier because of his evo cost, even though with his ability, his evo cost is basically free if you can use it correctly. But regardless, just the fact that he can make playing Ragnalordmon that much easier is just really, really good. On top of which, he also has a very powerful ability where during your turn, all of your red Digimon with 4 or more Digivolution sources get Security Attack +1. So not only could it make our Durandamon and our Phoenixmon have Security Attack +1, but it also can make our Ragnalordmon have Security Attack +1 because he is still a red Digimon. And then it's very easy to get 4 or more Digivolution sources on him, just because his ability also has the potential of adding another Digivolution source into him. So it just acts as even more ways to get Security Attack +1. So a fully stacked Ragnalordmon will have Security Attack +1 from here, Security Attack +1 from here, so that's already 3 security attacks. Then we have 4 security attacks, and then with Tai, he'll have a total of 5 security checks on his 1 security attack. So that's just really, really powerful to think about, especially fully stacked with a Durandamon and BryweLudramon, because he'll have Blocker Reboot and Piercing just to try to get through the opponent's defenses. So Ragnalordmon is just a very powerful card, and Tai Kamiya is just a very powerful tamer to help synergize with the deck. Now, I do have some other possible cards you could think about running in the deck. You could think about using Coramon as just another Digitama in the deck. So if you really don't feel like Gigimon's working out, or you just want to run a variety of different Digitama, Coramon is really good to think about just because he's just another way to buff our high-end Digimon, and that's just still a pretty good ability to have. You could also think about running the promo version of Biyomon. So this promo version of Biyomon is actually really interesting and pretty decent because it has the nice inheritable ability where during your turn, when this Digimon destroys one of the opponent's Digimon by battle, then you get to draw one card. So Red doesn't have a whole lot of ways of drawing cards, and the fact that we could potentially get Piercing off of Durandamon onto our level 7s, mean that this card just works with our level 7s, making it so they don't really want to block, and if they do block, then we get to draw a card, or if they have a rested Digimon, and we still just want to aggress into the Digimon, then Biomon is really good for just rewarding us for doing that by letting us draw cards. So Biomon is definitely a really interesting tech option that you could think about. If you want the safety of running a blocker, then you could also run Chord Drum. So I just feel like this deck is just trying to be as aggressive as possible and trying to set up and get into Ragnalordmon as quickly as possible. And if the whole goal is just to sit on Ragnalordmon and have him be the blocker, I really didn't feel like I needed Chord Drum, and I'd rather just have more consistent ways of buffing his ability to have Security Plus. But if you want to just sacrifice a little bit of the potential of him always hitting for 4 or 5 security, then putting in Chord Drum definitely will help with the overall defense of the game, so that way you have an additional blocker to play around with. You could also think about running this version of Metal Greymon. So this version of Metal Greymon is pretty interesting because he innately has the piercing ability, which is pretty good depending on how you build the rest of your deck, just because you could build a little bit more into the piercing synergy. Then on top of which he has a really nice when Digivolved ability where we get to return one virus attribute level 7 Digimon from our trash to our hand. So the majority of the level 7s that we have access to for this deck, they all are virus attribute, even Ragnalordmon. Just the fact that you could add a Ragnalordmon from your trash to your hand just by digivolving up into Metal Greymon is just something really interesting to think about. This also works out really well with Omnimon Alter S, just because Omnimon Alter S is also a level 7 virus. So that's just another potential synergy card that this card can grab. And that's just really, really powerful to think about. You could also think about running Black War Greymon. So Black War Greymon is kind of a really interesting tech option. This could also be Machinedramon if you really wanted it to. But basically the whole idea is just to have a really good mega that we want to play just as a mega. And Black War Greymon is pretty interesting just because his ability could help reduce his cost to make him a more cost-efficient card to play. You could also think about running Machinedramon in this slot just because Machinedramon is another blocker. He is black, so you could still Digivolve into Ragnalordmon off of him. And then Machinedramon's D-Digivolve 2 ability is also very, very good on 2 of the opponent's Digimon. But I just felt like Black War Greymon is definitely a more spicier card to highlight, just because he's still just a very powerful Digimon in his own right, just because he could reduce his cost by 6 if the opponent has a Digimon with 10,000 DP or more on their field. So that's just really interesting to think about as like a, not really a comeback mechanic, but like a way to help get yourself back into the game. And then on top of which he has a really nice when attacking ability where if this Digimon attacks the opponent's Digimon with the highest DP on their field, then this Digimon becomes active. So he kind of just promotes the whole beat up onto the opponent's Digimon, and if they have any rested Digimon that he could beat up, that's still pretty decent to think about. You could also think about running KresGuruman. So KresGuruman is another interesting Digimon just because he could evo off of red or black. So that's kind of like the whole theme behind a lot of our level 6s is like you just want to make sure that you're always able to get into your level 7s no matter what level 6 you use. So he's definitely a really good card at doing that as well. He has the reboot ability innately, so you could kind of like aggress with him as well. And then on top of all of that, he even has a nice when Digivolved ability where for each of the opponent's Digimon, you reveal one card off the top of your deck, and then you may play one red or black level 5 or less Digimon among them for free, and then the rest go to the bottom. So the more Digimon that the opponent have on the field, the more possibilities you have to dig for something that you really, really want. And just being able to cheat out a potential level 5 for free is still a very, very powerful ability because, again, our whole goal is to try to get to our level 7s and try to have as many megas as we can on our field, because the whole goal is to try to get into our level 7s as quickly as possible. So KresGuruman, just basically adding another Digimon to start another stack, just makes it really, really good just to apply a whole bunch of extra pressure onto the opponent. You could also think about using Blitz Greymon. So Blitz Greymon is an absolutely insane card for this deck if you choose to run him, just because he has 12,000 DP, he has the piercing ability innately, so he already just has a good amount of synergy with the deck, and you don't necessarily need to use him to Digivolve up into RagnaLoardmon if you don't want to, or you don't need to Digivolve him into Omnimon if you don't need to. And then on top of that, he has a really powerful when Digivolved ability where one of the opponent's Digimon gets de-Digivolved too. And de-Digivolve 2 is just very, very powerful at just setting the opponent that much farther back from their game plan. And it also just helps you deal with potential Digimon you can't really deal with otherwise. You could also think about running the original Omnimon. So the original Omnimon is still a pretty good card even in this format. I don't necessarily think this is exactly the deck for him just because we're so focused on Ragnalordmon, and Alter S is just a better synergy card for the deck. But if you really wanted to tweak it just to play more red cards, then you could just think about running the OG Omnimon just because he's still a very, very solid card. And then as far as options you could run, one of the best options that probably I don't see a lot of people have been like testing around with or playing, and that's a Delicate Plan. So a Delicate Plan is actually a really good option card for basically any red deck, just because its main ability is very, very good and it's a very, very cost-efficient card. For one memory, what you get to do is one of your Digimon basically just ignores the security effects of option cards in the security for the turn. So if you know you're going to be swinging in with a Digimon that has a whole bunch of security attack, then playing a Delicate Plan basically just turns all of their option cards into dead cards, and especially on a big body like Ragnalordmon, you want him to live or survive, and you don't want the opponent's securities to just interact with him in any way. So having a Delicate Plan definitely can help turn off a lot of those threats, and basically just make it very, very easy for you to want to swing into the opponent's security with. And then another card that you could potentially think about running is Plasma Stake. So Plasma Stake is just another fantastic removal option card for red. The condition is a little bit more like niche, but it's still a very, very powerful card just because for the low cost of 4, you can destroy one of your opponent's Digimon with 13,000 DP or more. So if the opponent has a Digimon that is DP boosted and Plasma Stake is in the security, then if that Digimon has 13, then it's just gone. This deals with basically every level 7 in the game. They're just gone. This could deal with a whole bunch of level 6s also. So this is just another really good, powerful removal card. So if you don't feel like you want to run Gaia Force, then you could run Plasma Stake instead. So for the most part, this is just the deck. The whole point of the deck is to be as aggressive as possible, trying to build up a really powerful Ragnalordmon, just to make it so it's very, very hard for the opponent to deal with just a single Ragnalordmon. And then Ragnalordmon being able to attack for basically all of the opponent's security is just, again, really, really powerful to think about. And there's a ton of different ways that you could build the deck depending on what cards and tools you want to utilize and focus on. So I'm just focusing on the fact that he's red and he can have a whole bunch of security attack. So that was the whole goal of this, but you could focus a little bit more on piercing. You could focus a little bit more on just a whole bunch of other strategies. And that just is what really makes Ragnalordmon a really interesting card, is even though he has 2 different colors he could play off of, each of those colors still have different ways that you could build and play the deck. So this is kind of just what I settled on and what I feel comfortable with, and I do think it's a really fun and interesting deck, even though it is just another red deck that's basically just trying to swing for 5 security. But it's the way that it's doing it that makes it really fun and really interesting. So That's all I really have for this video. As always, I'll have the deck list down in the description below, and feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.